Alright, this one's a decent hand. We have Leyline into Ragavan. We have 3 lands, which probably about the max you want as a Zoo player, and we're up against Zoo anyway, so this could be entertaining. I suppose there's an outside shot. It could be a sure. Nothing we can do about that, unfortunately. I think our job is to get Ragavan down. Good Blood Crypt. Get the monkey going. Chances of this connecting aren't obviously very high, but interesting. Yep, that's gonna be a problem. Need to find a Leyline binding quickly. That works. Alright, so get Temple Garden. Binding theirs. No good attacks currently with that. This is where your mana gets a little awkward. Yeah, it looks like they're on the counterspell variant of Zoo. What are they going after here? Sure. Oh, I guess they're surveilling to see if they can leave something garbage on top. Makes some amount of sense. Okay, I do not want us to draw a Scion. Let's see what we hit here. Flage. No, I'm definitely not putting that in their yard. WD ain't gonna get a whole lot in this situation, but okay, they shock something in. They're casting another. Oh my. Okay. So they hit. They're actually a Rhinos deck. Did not see Rhinos on my bucket list. So I guess theoretically we could attack with Ragavan, kill the Rhino that blocks Ragavan. Sure. Question is, do we bring in Consign against a Cascade deck? I think we might, because our bolts are relatively useless. Yep, they get us in for 5. Their fetch land would be pretty decent. Alright, so what am I getting here? Steam vents? I feel like I'm getting steam vents. They had endurance, that would be like the ultimate blowout here. Okay. That ice is a little late to the party. If you would have done it during my upkeep, you would have been in better shape, but nothing you can do about that. Maybe they drew in the subtlety off the fire ace. That's a possibility, I suppose. Alright. So, good old-fashioned Rhinos. Artifacts don't cause abilities to trigger. Doesn't really do a whole lot against Cascade. I mean, it might help a little bit theoretically. Could bring in those against the leyline package. I guess we should go with what goes out. Bolts are pretty terrible. Tribal Flames and that are fine. Ragavan's probably okay on the draw. Go like that, maybe go down. Go down a Frog. Not a huge fan of Consign. I mean, I guess theoretically it gets Scion. I'll try this one. Because theoretically it gets Scion and the Cascade trigger, so it's not terror bad, but it ain't good. Dude, shock in here on 1/4. We're looking for a second land, obviously, so we gotta use our Raucous Theater. I can definitely gotta go to the yard. How you lose? Let's say I suspect this is a Lorien revealed is the only thing that could possibly be. Yeah. Sure. Land, please. No land. Alright, so I guess we die. Sure. Ardent Plea into Rhinos. I guess we should take a look at what they got going on. Not it's surprising at all, but subtlety. Never known a Rhino deck that doesn't have everything. Okay. Gets to attack because of whatchamacallit. Do you have another thing at Rhinos? Of course you do. Oh, good grief. This will probably force them to use a... Okay, or not. Sure. Flash to the face. Okay, Scion, hit you for 4. Do you have Force Negation? You do not. Good to know. Nothing out of the weird. So it's consigned to memory, I think, on the draw of one of the Ragavans. I'm gonna bring out 2 Ragavans. Get the frog back in. Do I want to revisit Damping Sphere? I don't think so. Once again, consign hits, cascade triggers, and Scion, both of which could be relevant, especially on the draw. Yeah, hands is okay. Sure. This is the awkward part about being on the draw, is our opponent can just like jam into jam. Alright, so Scion's incoming. Okay. Only assume this is going after Ragavan. Yeah. Don't like this if they're playing a beautiful master game of we have the third land and we're going to cascade and you're going to lose. Is there another untapped white source in this deck? I guess Sacred Foundry, so we top that. so I did bring in the wear tears at least. Okay, they do have another surveil land. Okay. So it's the 4. We need a ley line binding here. Alright, another one of those tricky one-landers, I do think, especially in the drought. Keep this hand, but... part of me wonders if I don't want a 22nd land in Zoo going forward. I considered that when I was looking at the various different versions of Zoo to try. Now, in my opinion, there's like 3 versions of Zoo. There's kind of the traditional Zoo version. There's the version that's running like this, Territorial Neshoba Brawler, etc. Then there is the versions that run Frog, like this one. Alright, so we're up against Living End. Living End's going to be a bit tricky game 1. Need to find one of our copies of Stubby D. Or our opponent just to miss land drops, that also works. So I think I want to try something a little bit backwards, as my wife laughs in the other room. I am going to go ahead and play out Frog. Now Frog doesn't guarantee the most damage, pressuring my opponent, etc. But what it does is this gives me a discard outlet for these 2 Scions in my hand, as well as potentially this Territorial Kadu. It is possible I could also have played the Territorial Kadu, start eating things out of their graveyard. But Frog gives me the chance to just like pitch a bunch of creatures, and then, you know, if they Living in, we have 2 Scions that they're going to struggle to answer, especially since we're guaranteed to at least get in 4 damage next turn, if not more. So Scions will kill in 2 hits. Strike Riverwinder. Do you find a land? I mean, if this were poker, they'd win because they had 3 of a kind, but... Creator of Mysteries. They on a mono blue variant? Okay, so this is 5 damage. Kavu would put them lethal next turn if they don't find what they're looking for. Alright, so we won the tougher game because they stumbled on lands. Definitely want all of this. Damping Spheres, at least a consideration. Bolt's a bit of a joke in this matchup. Tribal Flames isn't great, but is it better than Leyline Binding? Like, they're likely to have endurances and things, which they'll be better at playing a fair game plan. So far we've played against Boros Energy in the opening round. Played against Is It Prowess, and then 2 Cascade decks, which I don't think have had a huge comeback from what I've been seeing. But then again, it's kind of hard to tell below the inner workings of Modern when you see Boros at like 25% of the meta. You see Is It Prowess, Murktide, and different things. This hand just doesn't do anything. We can't really cast Scion onto. Leyline Bindings are pretty bad in the matchup. Flage doesn't do much against a... Hand would be great if we had a land, but... This hand isn't great either, but we'll keep it. Put back a Frog and a Scion and hope to get a little lucky here. Alright, so I guess we get Steam Vents here. And considering the fact that they may very well be mono blue living end, the chances of them having actual interaction are much higher. But no, it looks like they've just had very unfortunate starts with their mana the last couple games. They did a heck of a job selling the fact that they had good grief. Okay. So if they got us with a subtlety there, it'd be kind of unfortunate, but we'd rather they have Ardent Plea than Shardless Agent here. Simply because we don't want a 2/2 blocker for our Ragavan. Ragavan's actually been surprisingly relevant this league. Like a lot of times, whether it's out of the energy deck or, you know, some of the other stuff, Ragavan just doesn't feel as relevant. Here it's allowed us to hold up I think we just eat the Ent out of the graveyard, don't we? Sure. Curator is an interesting card, but I don't think we risk taking down our shields here. That's not terrible. Exile the Ent. That was dumb on so many levels. I should have stopped. Because now we're going to get got by Mystical Dispute. So what I should have done is I should have stifled the Living End trigger or the Cascade trigger with Consign, and then if they had Mystical Dispute, follow it up with Stubborn Denial. So that opened us up to actually losing, potentially, if our opponent had exactly this in the Mystical Dispute. Now, I don't even know if Living End builds of late even run Mystical Dispute, but still, no reason to open yourself up to a card you lose to, and otherwise when you can just beat it with cards in your hand. Alright, final match of this league. Can we get a 4-1? Don't think this is a good enough hand. This hand is fine. Putting back the third land, or am I putting back one of the threats? From now, I'll put back the third land. So that can fetch. Crypt, Vagabond, go. Okay, so it looks like we're up against Amulet. No, we're actually up against, oh my. Guess we should have actually cast Mox Opal, because between this, a treasure, and that, we actually could have done something. Let me take Kavu here. Take Bolt. Okay. Bridge, sure. I'm going to lose two Lantern Control. Okay. Alright, death by boredom is not exactly my favorite forte. So definitely want the consigns and the stubborn denial. Wear tears. Scan Ragavan's kind of important in the matchup overall, but this was always a tricky matchup, even for Burn to a certain degree. You know, like Jund was like the antithesis deck of Lantern back in the day, like with the Abrupt Decays and the Kolaghan's Commands and all the different shatter effects. Burn could be fast enough to close out the game, but like, you know, anything that relied on a particular piece to be part of the game really would struggle sometimes. Yeah, I'll keep this one. Alright, so let's get Ragavan down. Turn one, Thoughtseize, yep. You gotta take the stubborn denial here. I guess theoretically, if they have a second discard spell, they could take something else, but we'll let Lantern go. Mm-hmm. All right. Does this hand do enough? Yeah, we'll keep this one. No pressure, which isn't great, but how do they navigate this is the question mark. Assume wear tear? No, probably. And go. Flooded strand, right? Curious what they mean. Sure. Okay, well, that should about wrap it up, huh? All right, nice to pick up the 4-1. All right, we are here with Zarap. Um, Once again, as I kind of mentioned in the opener, I do think I want to try to get one of the 22 land builds rolling around. Wasn't overly impressed with Psychic Frog. It certainly was a fine threat in some spots. It was nice to have a secondary threat that flies. The downside with Frog is it does compete with Flage for the limited graveyard fuel. This deck isn't like doing a bunch of cantripping and stuff, so much of our graveyard fueling is our fetch lands, which is fine. So would be interested to explore this more in the future, but I don't know that's the strongest Psychic Frog deck in the world, though I do know Psychic Frog can be certainly a runaway threat in certain matchups. The rest of the main deck, I mean, I don't have too much to comment on. Ragavan is still a good one drop, regardless of your feelings about it, especially if you can get in situations where you can leverage the mana or remove the threat and then continue to hit with it. And if you look at the sideboard, I think the sideboard was fairly balanced. We brought in basically everything but the 2 Charmaws, and Damping Sphere we could have brought in a couple different matchups. So both of these are fine. Charmaw I even could have brought in against Lantern very easily. So not to say this card can't be brought in, I just didn't feel it was the right matchup. Doorkeeper Thrall really only relevant against Energy, and it did kind of help us out in that matchup a little bit. Rest in Peace would have been clutch against Living End. So basically everything, we used all parts of the Buffalo. Kind of hard to argue with the results, but as always, if you do like red-based content, especially for now for the modern format, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you for our next video.